So these are my kind of shows, John. We have nothing really to talk about except racing. And the racing was fabulous on both sides of the Atlantic in the past week. We'll obviously start with the Travers. It was a phenomenal day of racing. Great weather, great crowd, 47,000 plus through the turnstiles at Saratoga. Record handle, $63 million. Blew away the previous record for a Travers Day at Saratoga. So it's shout out to everybody at NYRA for putting on a great show. Shout out to the horses. Shout out to the people who did the work behind the scenes to get everybody to those races. We got to start with the big one, the Travers. John, there's been some great renewals over the years. I think of Arrogate's huge blowout win. I think of the dead heat between Golden Ticket and Alpha. There's some really, really good Travers to remember. To me, this one tops the list. And a big part of it was that Kenny McPeek entered Thorpedo Anna in that race. He didn't have to do that. He did it for the sporting gesture. And she gave Fierceness all that he could handle. They both got 111 buyers. In this day and age, you don't see 110 plus buyers all that much, especially from 3-year-olds. And they laid it all on the line through the Saratoga stretch. Thorpedo Anna just didn't quit. She got a great trip, I thought, under Brian Hernandez. She just kept coming. Fierceness has proven now that he can string races together. To me, he's the new leader in the clubhouse in the 3-year-old division. Proved he could go 1.25 miles. He still he got a good trip, so there was really not a straw on his path, but he had to win that race. The other speeds didn't stick around. Sierra Leone, once again, comes up short, ran well, but once again was overbet and is becoming a bit of a money burner. But I won't focus on that. I'll focus on the top two because, John, those are the two. You could make the argument, I think, Arthur's Ride is the only other one I'd put in there. You can make the argument that those are the two best horses in the country that we saw throw down in the Travers on Saturday.
Well, it was everything we had hoped for and a little bit more than we expected. I mean, it was just an incredible race between really a couple of champions. I mean, Fierceness is a champion. Thorpedo Anna is quickly becoming a champion. And you give credit to, like you said, Kenny McPeek for even offering up the filly into a race like that. And Joe, we talked about the race and we talked about how many grade 1 and grade 2 winners there were and how this was a quote unquote legitimate grade 1, on paper coming in. And it blew me away with the finish. And a couple of things that I now have to take out of my repertoire. Number one is the race sets up for Sierra Leone. Okay. All right. Fool me once. Shame on you. Fool me twice. Shame on me. Fool me 8 times. It's a good thing I don't bet.
If you say it again, you should have to get that tattooed on you somewhere. Race sets up for Sierra Leone.
Instead of
wow.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story.
Edgier than I thought you'd be.
The other thing, Joe, is I have to take out of my lexicon is Fierceness is inconsistent. Now, you can still kind of say that, but 3 out of the past 4 now, he's put together phenomenal races in the Florida Derby, the Jim Dandy, and now the Travers. A couple of grade 1s and a grade 2, and the Jim Dandy, being like a grade 2 plus as far as I'm concerned. And now you look at him and you say, okay, well, was he champion as a 2-year-old by default? Maybe you can make that argument. He won an impressive race at Saratoga, breaking his maiden, and then he won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile 2 out of his 3 races. But now he's strung together. Like I said, 3 out of the past 4 races have been very, very good. The 111 buyer is outstanding. It was only a point better than his Florida Derby, but he is ascending now into, hitting his stride, going into the biggest races of the 3-year-old year, 3-year-old campaign now that the Derby and the Preakness and the Belmont are behind us. The other thing that surprised me about the race, Joe, is that nobody wanted the lead. There were 3 or 4 horses that we looked at and said, well, Unmatched Wisdom can go to the front, Batten Down can go to the front, Honor Marie is fresh and has the blinkers on, can go to the front. And yet none of them wanted to go, not even toe-to-toe. None of them wanted to go to the front end, which really kind of boggled my mind. But it doesn't matter. Fierceness and Thorpedo Anna, on any given day, either one of them could have beaten the other. But it was just a great race, and it was a feel-good story on a lot of levels. And I think, Rapoli and his team handled everything with class, and which is also something that's a little unusual, but they handled it the right way. And now I'm just looking forward to letting the horses talk for themselves and this battle that's going to happen in November.
Yeah, well, I always love the cuts to the Rapoli box after he wins. He was like passed out. He was just like lying prone in the box. He was so overwhelmed with excitement. Like that's what it's all about. And like I said, Kenny McPeek and Thorpedo Anna are the reason that we got the show that we did. Not to take anything away from Fierceness, because like I said, I think he's now the best 3-year-old in the country, has a legit chance to be 2-year-old champion and 3-year-old champion back to back. And that doesn't happen all that often, and really was kind of inconceivable if you went back to the Derby. It didn't seem like he would even really make an impact in this division, much less be at the top after the Travers. But yeah, I think, Kenny McPeek and Thorpedo Anna were the show that day, and they did not disappoint. And, it's not just a sporting gesture. I was thinking about this. I think it's a good money move sometimes too, to make this kind of decision, because Power Squeeze got $330K for winning the Alabama. Thorpedo Anna got $250 for running second in the Travers, and 2 more jumps, she gets $750. So it sometimes can be a lucrative move too, not just a sporting move to do for the good of the sport. And so that's what's kind of interesting if we spin this conversation and spin this outlook forward, is what he's going to do with her the rest of the year. Now, he said that he's going to run the Cotillion and then run in the Breeders' Cup Distaff. I think there's a little bit of time for him to maybe change his mind on that, because the Breeders' Cup Classic is $7 million. What's the Distaff, like 2 or 3? We need a fact checker. Julia, where are you at? But it's definitely a lot less than the Classic. And who do you really have to be scared of? I mentioned Arthur's Ride. He's got that one big race in the Whitney. But other than that, you just ran against the best horses in the country, and you came up this short. And for those listening, my fingers are very close together right now. And it is a phenomenal effort that proves she can run with anybody in the country, if not the world. So I kind of hope he reconsiders. I think the Cotillion is a no-brainer in terms of the spacing. Go back against fillies, collect an easy $600K. Nobody's going to touch her in that race. But I kind of hope he reconsiders and starts thinking about the Classic.
Yeah, the only thing I would say about that, Joe, is that at some point in time, a champion is only minted once out of every crop. And I think when they're looking at Thorpedo Anna, unless they're going to keep her to breed themselves, it's worth a lot more to the general market to be a champion. And for her to be a champion in the filly division is a lot easier than for her to be a champion against the boys. I'm not saying she can't beat the boys, because obviously she has, and obviously she's come very close again. But at this stage of the game, I personally understand the idea of taking the easier road, the Cotillion, and then shipping her to California and running in the Breeders' Cup, winning the Classic, the filly division, and then earning it in the probably the Night of Stars, we would hope, because she is a FASIC grad. And then having her value, added exponentially by a couple $1 million because she is a champion.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, but I don't think who's going to catch her. Who's going to catch her in this division? Power Squeeze is the only one who has even a prayer, because she won the Alabama, she won the Delaware Oaks, she won the Gulfstream Oaks, I believe. But that's only one grade 1.
Right.
Thorpedo Anna's got 3. She's got a second in the Travers. I don't think that this division is losable for her at this point. So why not take the bigger shot? And I looked it up, $2 million. My instinct was correct for the Distaff, $7 million for the Classic. So there's a world where you can run second in the Classic and have, a kind of similar payout to what you would have for winning the Distaff, at least in the same ballpark. That brings me to another race I want to talk about. And there's so many races that we're going to talk about from the past week. So, John, if you want to jump in and throw something else out there, feel free. But I wanted to mention Idiomatic in the personal ends in on Friday. I dare you to find me a horse who's run better in defeat this year than Idiomatic, because she and Randomize hooked up all the way around, and she buried Randomize. Randomize had nothing turning for home, and no disrespect to Raging Sea, because she did have to come and get her, but Idiomatic was really gasping in that last 16th of a mile, understandably, just got nailed in the last jump. So that's twice this year that I think that she's been clearly the best horse. When she lost to Randomized in the Ogden Phipps, she didn't break that well. She didn't go to the lead. That's why I'm curious to hear your take on this, John. I see Florent Giroux getting a lot of criticism for his ride on her, and I get that. But I honestly, and just from my perspective, I can't have it both ways, because I was critical of him for not being aggressive and going to the front in the Ogden Phipps. This time he was aggressive. He did go to the front. Unfortunately, Randomized was on apparently a suicide mission and set it up for her stablemate perfectly. So I can't really get mad at him over that. You could say, once it seemed like they were going too fast, you could have taken back a little bit and gone outside of her. But you can't have it both ways. People were mad at him for the Molly Pitcher ride too, and Brad Cox has stuck with him. But yeah, I think she's just been an unbelievably unlucky horse so far this year, and I think she's clearly still the best fillier mare in the country, older fillier mare in the country. John, any thoughts on the personal instinct?
I didn't really have a lot of thoughts on the personal instinct. I know you were going to tackle that one on your own, and I think you encapsulated it exactly right. And again, it is a gift that we're continuing to watch her race, because in a lot of other camps she wouldn't have been racing right now. She'd be either pregnant or have a foal by her side. I went a little bit different route, and I know we're going to kind of jump around a couple different races, Joe, but I was looking at a race that really impressed me. There was two of them. One was Domestic Product in the Jerkins. I was really impressed because I was always of the opinion that his racing style lent itself to running further and running a mile and a quarter, a mile and an eighth, at the very least. And they cut him back to the 1 turn 7/8 of a mile. And he ran down a great field in that race. I mean, it really was a shockingly good field for a sprint race like that, and beat up on, well, not beat up, but beat Prince of Monaco and the rest of that field. Bookham Dano, who is probably, I would have said before the race, legitimately the best 3-year-old sprinter in the country, but took on a number of good horses in a distance that he had never run before. And won, and he has just found a new dimension, which 9-10 races into a horse's career, that's not easy to do. So I give Chad Brown and his team, Klarovich et al., a lot of credit for cutting him back in distance. When you have a come from behind distance horse, that's not usually the move that you look at, but they knew their horse better.
Yeah, no, it was a great race. 106 Buyer that we said before the card that before Saturday that was like the most stacked race on the card. I also want to mention the Sword Dancer. I got to give you credit, John, because I thought that was just going to be a Godolphin procession, 1-2, and I think it kind of felt like a miscalculation to me by the Godolphin and Charlie Appleby team. I mean, for a horse to be on the front end, doling out those kind of splits, very, very soft fractions, when your horses, both of them, Silver Knot and Measured Time, have proven to be very, very tough to beat when they're up on the pace. I thought they overthought that a little bit and screwed up and just assumed that Farbridge was going to quit, which he didn't, obviously. Yep. So mega shout out to the Clements. Great training job. Masterful ride. I already gave you your shout out. This is... John, we've moved on. You got your credit. It's like you're free to pat yourself on the back once I'm done, but okay, sorry, I don't know what else you want from me, brother. Anyway, I just wanted to shout out the Clements and Joel Rosario, the people who actually did it on the racetrack for an unbelievable job with that horse. And I guarantee you, if you asked Charlie Appleby if he could have a do-over, he'd want at least one of those horses. Don't know which one of them to be on the lead because they kind of overthought it, I think, a little bit.
Right. Yeah, and since, Joe, we're both patting me on the back, I'm going to go to another reason why you should be, so in awe of my overall, analytics, and that is, where did Vava finish in the ballerina?
Whoa, low blow.
And who won? Who won though?
Low blow.
Julia, can we run back to that part of last show where we talked about this?
I'm not poo-pooing Vava. I really like her as a racehorse. We've talked about it before. I think Sherry DeVoe's done a phenomenal job with the horse. But yeah, you got to talk about more than one horse in a grade one, for God's sake, Joe. Come on.
This is what John does. He didn't pick the horse.
I did pick Society.
You said, no, you didn't.
In the race?
No,
listen.
You didn't. You said there were other nice horses in there. Society's a nice horse. That counts as picking a horse to public handicapper Jon Green over here.
It does. It definitely does. It's why people listen to the show, quite frankly, because they need the yin and the yang.
Yes, they need your handicapping insights for sure. That's what people come for.
Joe, can we also talk about some races north of the border? Because there was a filly there that beat the boys in $1 million race, and it wasn't the Travers. It was Caitlin of Greatness, who actually went 1.25 miles and beat the boys in the King's Plate. I think that was a big surprise for a lot of people as well.
Yeah, no, I mean that's your department. You're the Canada reporter here. I just wanted to touch on the ballerina real quick, just because. No, we'll go back to Canada. I just wanted to touch on it because it was a disappointing effort for Vava, and the division has changed a lot since she won the grade 1 earlier in the year on Derby Day. It seemed like she kind of had it, not in the bag, obviously, because still a lot of time to go, but she had the kind of the inside track on getting that championship. But now Society's got the grade 1 win. And I don't know if you saw on Sunday night, Rancho Bernardo Stakes at Del Mar,
Right.
Sweet Azteca.
Right.
That was a weak field. That was kind of a paid workout. But man, is she scary! Like, to me, and especially with the Filly Mare Sprint, the Breeders' Cup being in her backyard,
exactly.
at Del Mar. Like, to me, those are the big three now leading up to the Filly Mare Sprint: Vava, Society, and Sweet Azteca. So it should be a fun race.
No, I think
tell us more about the Woodbine greats.
So we had the King's Plate. We already talked about that. That was very impressive, and I know that representatives from WinStar were actually up there to accept the trophy, which was great. That whole card got moved off a week, Joe, if you remember. So it was a little bit of kind of a shitstorm because they had to move the races, and they decided to make it on a Friday instead of on Travers Saturday or Del Mar Sunday, and they did. But what it did for the rest of us fans is it gave us like a 3-day weekend of great racing, kicked off by Woodbine. And again, since we're talking about how good I am, because we certainly will be talking about one thing that I screwed up on, but the Catch a Glimpse, we put in, we had Bullet in there who we fully expected to run off, and she was like 3-5 in the race. And then we put a maiden in there, Shifty, primarily because she made a huge ground after breaking like dead last and ended up 5th, but made up literally 15 lengths in the sprint race against the boys. So we're like, she probably, if she had won that race, we would have put her in this race anyway in the Catch a Glimpse. Let's go ahead and put her in there. And all she did was win and run an 85 buyer, which is the highest buyer for a 2-year-old filly turf race of this year. So we were just shocked. If you said, "Hey, you're going to win the Catch a Glimpse," I probably would have said, "Yeah, that's a pretty good bet." Not with the also ran. I mean, not with the 6-1 in the race when you have Bullet in there. We did come back and find out that after the race we scoped Bullet and she came up with a head full of mucus and was a 4-5 in that sense. So in that sense, the extra 5 days off or 6 days off hurt us because she was peaking last week and this week we didn't know she was sick. Even though we take temperatures and we scope them and everything like that the day before the race. But she put in kind of as much as she could, and then she just couldn't breathe anymore. But Shifty, I was just shocked and amazed at just how brilliantly she ran. And Joe, I think that with the timing of it, she's actually going to run. I'll announce it here for the first time. Shifty is
That's my drum
roll. It is
roll.
a Rail Talk exclusive that we're going to run Shifty in the Miss Grillo in New York to give her the little extra time because we don't want her to bounce.
Does that mean you're going to come to Aqueduct? Are you going to slum it at Aqueduct with me, John?
It depends on the time of the year. Yeah, I might have to.
Okay,
I might have to. But
that might be on my honeymoon. But
oh well, forget it. Then we're not running her there. I was doing it for you. That was your wedding present from us.
Sometimes even more exciting to win with the horse you didn't expect to win with.
Sometimes
that's very cool.
Sometimes you come home from the dance with the girl that brought you, and sometimes you just come home.
Yeah, you have a lot of experience in that.
Absolutely.